So, hi there. Thanks for sitting through what is not necessarily the most uplifting movie to watch, but oh so relevant, particularly in this day and age. So hi there, my name's Saul Berman. I'm the University of Michigan's Chief Information Security Officer. I also lead privacy efforts for the university, and I have a faculty role where I teach on privacy and surveillance at the School of Information. As with many of you, I suspect reading 1984 was required in high school, and perhaps like some of you, and it's dating me, it was extra meaningful if you were in high school in 1984. So given the film we just saw and the current state of the world, it feels odd saying that I'm excited for our brief panel tonight, but I am, because mainly the amazing people that are sitting next to me. So I'm going to do some quick introductions and ask for our panel members to offer some thoughts. Then we're going to open it up for conversation with you, and we have microphones at the end of each aisle here for questions. So first let me introduce Christian Davenport. Professor Davenport's research interests include political conflict, human rights violations, genocide, politicide, torture, political surveillance, civil war, and social movements. Also let me introduce Barb McQuaid, professor from practice at Michigan Law, whose interests include criminal law, criminal procedure, national security, data privacy, civil rights, and I would add dis and misinformation. So let's get to it right now. Again, format perspective, I'll ask each panelist to take a couple minutes to give their own thoughts and insights on the film and the book and what 1984 means to them now. Then I really want to open it up for questions. Again, microphones at each end of the aisle. So Christian, let's hear from you first, and then we'll move on to Barb.
This on? Yes. Yeah, that was pretty powerful. Beautiful, but at the same time problematic. What I find intriguing about thinking about the film and seeing it now is, this will sound strange for a second, but I miss the clarity of that period. I miss the clarity of totalitarian government being this problem and it being the clear enemy and what you're pursuing. And I say it in this way to highlight how it's now dated in many respects, right? So I think political totalitarianism as the problem, as the principal thing that we're to focus on and shift away from and challenge and subvert, I think has been displaced in many ways by an economic totalitarianism of sorts. It involves different actors, it involves different ways of subversion, it involves different things of challenging. In addition to the element of having this big brother-esque kind of entity that's behind all things in surveilling, I mean, we have a few companies that basically predominate in the control of surveillance and all types of things that we're doing. But there's so I'm wearing glasses that are now fundamentally able to stream information that I can then restrict or not. But we're now in an age where effectively we're carrying the devices themselves willingly. We are engaging in activities willingly where we're documenting all these thoughts that would then be subject to monitoring and so forth. And so the scene in the film where he initially comes into his apartment and pulls out the book, which for him is so sacred. I mean, the idea of a book being sacred now, we're in this bizarre generation where many folks are not even reading, right? So the idea of a book and putting your stuff there, but now it's been displaced or replaced with blog posts and other types of things also, which could be scraped and scanned. It's like the degree to which we are individualistically complicit within it is our subjugation is incredibly phenomenal to think about. And also there's, within the social science literature, there's this idea of the three faces of power. The first face is exactly where Richard Burton, I mean, just like the voice of the horrible, evil individual, who better to be repressed by than Richard Burton, right? But him talking about, like, you know, coercion and force is the first face of power. It's the thing that we're most clearly understanding in many respects. The third face of power is when you yourself no longer engage in activities that are deemed to be challenging to someone else. You regulate your own behavior. It's so much more effective in terms of subjugation because you as the dominant, you as the subordinate or superordinate, don't have to exert effort in terms of subjugating someone else. They're doing it themselves. And so the film shows that to you, the book shows that to you, how you use coercion and force to try to get to this level of self-regulation and self-control. And as you think of the dating of the film, as you think of how things have transformed, we now think of what is it that we're self-regulating towards. At least in the 70s and 80s, we were having a conversation about what that was. If you go back even further, in the 20s and 30s, we actually had conversations about who deserved to take profit, who deserved to benefit from profit. That was an actual conversation we had within the society. We're so far from that. We're so far from that. We're so far from thinking about exactly what alternative conceptions of what our objectives should be politically or economically or social culturally. So we're so caught up in self-regulation and entertainment that we've kind of like missed a lot of these regulatory elements. So the idea of having a clear enemy to figure out exactly who you go after, who you mobilize, who you challenge against, and try to subvert, even if you have to kind of like internally exit. So think of Albert Hirschman, exit voice and loyalty. It's like, okay, we could exit a situation. Now where are you gonna go? It's like, your thing's with you everywhere. Where are you gonna go? How are you gonna go there? What are you gonna articulate? What is the thing that you would replace the current system with? And so the film, for me, in many respects, reveals this lost moment where we had the clarity of the opponent. We had a clearer understanding of what we might try to subvert. And now we're so far from that, and have generationally lost conceptions of those that understand or have read or even considered Kropotkin or even the old left. I mean, forget the new left. I mean, so we've lost these trajectories of thought. And so now we're in this spot where, okay, newspeak, doublespeak would even be an advancement on what we have now. And so I view the dating as very interesting, but the degree to which totalitarianism, the political totalitarianism that kind of underlies, or it's the overarching theme of the film and the book, has been displaced and replaced with something else that we're just so far from understanding, and let alone challenging in a coherent manner, that the film is even more depressing this time around. So I'll stop.
Barb.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this. The line from 1984 that has always stuck with me, and like you, Saul, I read it in high school when it was 1984 was in the future for me, and it was this futuristic. And now you look at this, and it looks so old-fashioned. It looks so dated, like the TV monitors. But I guess that was probably how it looked in 1984. And I think, in 1984, when this movie was made, the enemy, the clarity, was the Soviet Union, right? Reagan was president, the Soviet Union was bad, and so this film was about, we're the good guys, we can make ourselves feel good because we don't live in the world like that. That's the Soviet Union. And there's a line from the book that has always resonated with me, and it's less about privacy and it's more about disinformation. And as Saul mentioned, this is an area of study for me, and I've just finished a book on disinformation called Attack from Within. And it's not about Russian disinformation, it's about American disinformation, and how about political actors in our country are harming our democracy and our public safety and the rule of law by saying things that aren't true. They are choosing their political tribe over truth. And so the line that resonated with me and that I quote in my book is this one: "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." And I think that's what we're seeing today. I mean, we have, Donald Trump telling us that there were more people at his inauguration than at the inauguration of Barack Obama, when we can see for ourselves with our own eyes that it isn't true. And we see the use of the same strategies of disinformation that have been used throughout history, the idea of repetition, the idea of the big lie. But now there is this new tool of social media and technology to reach more people more quickly and with anonymity. And so we are really fighting against this very challenging thing. And in a strange way, rather than framing the Soviet Union as the enemy, there are some in the United States who are now framing Russia as the ideal and trying to convince Americans that Russia is something we should be more like, and not framing it as, the evil empire. And in Russia, as I did a lot of research on this for my book, and it's included in the book, it talks about in Russia, there is disdain for truth. Truth is considered something that's for suckers. Truth is obsolete. Everything is PR. And if you are sophisticated, you don't worry about truth. You just worry about whether your side is winning. Get what you can while you can, and truth doesn't matter. To portray everyone as being corrupt. If everyone is corrupt, then I can get away with my corruption because I've normalized corruption. And so in Putin's Russia, everybody's corrupt, but you should just get what you can while you can. And the consequence is that people become very cynical and then numb and finally disengage from politics altogether because I can't control anything. Who knows what to believe? Some days it's the FBI planted the evidence, and then the next day I have every right to take those documents, they're mine. There's no consistency, and so people become exhausted and give up and decide they don't want to engage at all in the political world. I think it is why we have seen Donald Trump grant pardons to many people for public corruption, from Rod Blagojevich to the father-in-law of Jared Kushner, the father of Jared Kushner, to Kwame Kilpatrick, because he's trying to normalize corruption. Everybody's corrupt. Everybody does it. No big deal. What you really want is what I can give you, which is a vision of America that's consistent with your vision of America. So truth doesn't matter. And so this movie really encapsulates for me this very frightening vision of what our future could look like if we do not seize at this moment a demand for truth and to cede that truth to others who would say it doesn't matter. And Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, has now adopted the language of Donald Trump, referring to January 6th defendants as hostages. This kind of language, doublespeak, newspeak, whatever it is, can cause people to change their opinions about things. And I think we need to make sure that everybody has a right to their own opinion, but we have to stick to the real facts. There are true facts. If we are going to be a system of self-governance, we have to insist on them. And so thank you for a reminder of just how bleak it can be if we don't take back our power through truth.
And thank you. So I have a bunch of questions of my own, but we have 2 microphones right here at the ends of the aisle. So do not be shy. Come on up, ask questions. Hi there.
Hi, thank you for an opportunity to be a first-time viewer tonight. I am wondering what your thoughts are on the themes that tie together privacy at Michigan events and/or privacy more broadly, how those connect, in your view, to the opening lines of the film, the part about past controlling the future and the present controlling the past. I think that's what it said, something like that.
Yeah, my take on surveillance and the kind of the desires of elites and people trying to kind of maintain control of the population. I find, consider this, if you don't know what to pursue in terms of what to challenge, so again, as I mentioned before, with regards to the 1920s and 1930s, there was a huge kind of antitrust sentiment that just pervaded much of American society. Everyone hated elites. I mean, hated. You could not flaunt like we do currently what wealth people have. You could, the lifestyles of Robin Leach in the 30s would not have lasted 5 seconds. They would have been oh, now I know what to burn down. So there was discussions of we shouldn't have an elite. Wealth inequality is unacceptable. Profit should be shared by those who create the wealth itself. So all of these ideas existed at this time period. We have basically none of these sentiments now. It's gone. It's been written out. It's been removed. And so as I think of your comment and thinking about exactly how you control the past and how you control the future and how you control claims making. So one of my topic areas is social movements. And if you think of what social movements are asking for, what problems they're seeing and what advocates they are for different type of mechanisms of social change, what solutions are people coming up with currently and what are the problems that they're identifying? And is there any connection whatsoever between the problems that they're identifying and the solutions that they're advocating? I'd argue that that's actually quite poorly thought out. We're not clear on the objectives, we're not clear on the mechanisms, we're not clear on the reasons why. And part of this is this reification we have of what do people look towards to kind of like resolve the solutions. So the youth are like, we don't need to look back because a bunch of old people haven't resolved the problem, so we're not looking. But this is very similar to kind of every other generation, right? And so we as scholars at an institution of higher learning are in the business of trying to figure out, okay, what can we distill from the past and communicate to individuals? But if people don't necessarily want to read and they don't have the time, I find it fascinating to have a conversation about 1984 and technology and all of these things sitting in a group that barely doesn't exist in America really anymore. The collective element where people were watching screens together and exhorting these things. I'm sitting, despite a football game, when are people coming together in a large session like this for any type of intellectual enterprise? So even the mechanism with which information is being communicated is fundamentally different right now, right? And so, and we're not really able to keep up with this battle for the present. I mean, how can you communicate any detailed, complex thoughts on Instagram or TikTok? It's just fundamentally antithetical to the mechanism of communicating information. Who reads 900-page books? And I'm sorry, some of the stuff that we're trying to address is deep enough to require you to actually wade through that much material. And so if someone's waiting for the TikTok version of Itzvan Metsamoros' book, Beyond Capital, which is basically, I mean, Marx's conception of exactly how to evaluate the political economy was dated when it was written, basically, because capitalism had moved on. But the monopoly capitalism we have now was not even thought about or written about now. But Metsamoros does this. Who the hell's got time to read a 900-page book on the development of what capitalism looks like now? Not many people. But if you don't do that, how are you going to fix any of the problems that are associated with that particular issue? Or you consider the book by Levine on the United States of War. He also wrote another book called Base Nation. The United States has 90% of military bases on the planet Earth. 90%. Why is that? How did we get there? How do we change it? Are we okay with that? I mean, so again, it's like you could try to TikTok that one, but that's going to be a much larger conversation. So we have this battle for the past, which is understanding how we got to the present. But in order to wade through that, that's a lot of commitment, which I don't think people have to try to figure that stuff out. Sorry, it's a long answer.
You know, it's fascinating to think about. You know, the actual quote is, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And again, I hear this and I just think about disinformation and the willingness of people to go along with the con. I remember that when William Barr was Attorney General, during an interview, he was asked a question about, are you concerned that your service in the Trump administration will taint your legacy? You know, he was Attorney General in the Bush administration as well. And he said, no, because the winners get to write the history. Whoa, right? I mean, that was mind-blowing. And it's a serious person saying this out loud on television. And it's true to some extent. And so what he was saying is, I'm not worried about the truth. If I win, if I'm in power, I can craft a narrative about the past that's favorable to me. And so I think that we really ought to be thinking about the consequences of that kind of view of the world. This was the Attorney General of the United States, and I think we need to demand accurate facts and not the spin, because if someone is writing history in a way that is inaccurate but favorable to one group over another, I think we're all in trouble. But it really is, I think, what motivates some of the things we see today about controlling the past, with banning books about slavery because we don't want kids to hate America, saying that the origins of the Civil War was a conflict between the states. I mean, all of those things are revisionist history to fit one person, one side's vision of America, to sanitize our past instead of accepting our country with all of its flaws and trying to learn from it. The 1619 Project, which talked about slavery and how elements of slavery continue to shape our society today, in our prisons, in our healthcare, in our economy, in our education. That's useful information. But I think that there are some forces that say we don't want to think about that. We want to think about the glory of the United States, and we want to ban certain books, which is so dangerous because it does suggest that there's just one version of history that we are tolerating and not an accurate version of history.
So, in thinking about the 1619, I mean, useful and truthful, because there is fundamental truth, and truth dictated by repeated lies via things like this, it becomes 1984. You don't need rats around your face at some point because you've just accepted what you've heard over and over and over again, and your group bubble that repeats it to you ad nauseum just reinforces it. Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The totalitarianism that the middle speaker spoke about, I'm sorry, I don't know anybody's names. It seemed like in this movie, the totalitarianism came from the right. I mean, the far right speaker spoke about the Soviet Union. I think National Socialism in Germany was also on Orwell's mind because he wrote the book in '46. Today, I think the totalitarianism is coming from the left with the political correctness, the ability to self-censor before you even speak about something, the woke culture, and the cancel culture. So that when people speak, for instance, when I speak at City Council, the City Council people turn their back. Because what I talk about isn't accepted. And this, in my view, totalitarianism is coming from the left. I guess my question to you would be, does anybody on this panel agree with that? And my second question is that the devastation that I saw on the film reminded me of Gaza today, and I wondered if that struck a chord with any of you. Thank you.
Clearly a yes with the second. I was quite struck by looking at the devastation of the terrain of this dystopian environment and looking at the pictures of Gaza. I was like, wow, I was very struck by that. I'll definitely disagree with the first point. To clarify, totalitarianism is a unified political system that fundamentally controls and manipulates all aspects of society. We do not have that. In fact, even the pretense of democracy, or the discussions of elections, or the discussions of separations of powers, or the discussions of the military, consider in the concept of separation of the executive from the military. Trump attempted, while president, to reach out to the military and interfere with their affairs. Repeatedly, a different military court at different levels of jurisdiction would attempt to convict somebody, and he'd come in and say, no, you're innocent. This was all an explicit effort to try to separate or get rid of the separation between the executive and the military. The military didn't accept it. In fact, General McMaster was very clear at a certain point. He was just like, we're not leaving anything with regards to any control over many aspects of the military to the executive or any civilian. We're going to make sure that that's very clear. And the generals were very clear about that, which became very interesting for me to watch. I'm just kind of like, okay, he tried to talk to the generals, that didn't work. Okay, now he's trying to go for the base. And so these elements were working. If this was a totalitarian system, there'd be no possibility whatsoever for any separation between them. In addition to that, you'd have there's no Hawaiian court can try to sanction the executive for this and we're waiting for a ruling. None of that. Totalitarian system is a coherent political entity where there's basically no separation whatsoever between politics, economics, or social cultural dynamics. So we have much more fluidity here than we would ever in that particular type of system, which is why it's like, why I said it was dated, right? It's just like the degree of coherence of the totalitarian system they have here, we're not even remotely close to that. 14,000 policing organizations that have very little coordination, separation of powers, all of these different elements. The variation you'd receive in city councils across America would be fascinating, right? So it's just like that variation doesn't exist within a totalitarian system. So we'd have to be clear on making sure that we have that definition kind of down pretty well. But, yeah.
I'll answer the question this way. I think what's depicted in the film is a very anti-Soviet sentiment. The Soviet Union was a totalitarian regime, I think communist, which I think is considered far left. But what I think is happening in our country that's so damaging is the extreme polarization, the idea that we talk about the left and the right as if there are only two sides to any question. And I think that our political parties are pushing us in that direction. There's a great book by Ezra Klein called Why We're So Polarized, and it talks about this became a strategy of politicians in the 90s. Instead, it used to be they tried to cultivate the moderate middle and the swing voter. And instead, I think it was Karl Rove, who was a political advisor to George W. Bush, said, we actually do better when we try to solidify our base and we reach out to the base. And the best way to reach out to the base is to say that other side is the devil. They're demons. They're woke. They're engaged in groupthink. They want to, kill your babies and eat your children, that other side. And, both sides engage in this, that it's this next election is an existential election and you have to come out, and they do things to rile you up. There's a trick that debaters use called the either-or fallacy, which is to suggest that there's only two sides to an issue, and that other side is so awful and so bad that it is completely untenable, so the only reasonable choice is to choose my side. And that is a trick, it's a debate. And so I think that we are all falling prey to it, and you see, when people are online, this idea that I'm just going to choose my team. When I was a young person in 1984 and in college, it was possible to have a different set of views on, the abortion issue, I might think one thing, and on immigration, I might think another, and on gun rights, I might think another. It wasn't required that I be aligned all on the left or all on the right. I thought for myself. I had independent views on these things. And now there's a demand, I think, for political purity. You must be on team blue or team red, or else we don't want anything to do with you and we will abandon you. And that leaves no room, as Christian is talking about, for nuance and areas of gray and advancing the interests of society through compromise. And so I think it's best not to frame things as the right or the left, but we're all in this together, and let's try to work to solve problems.
No groupthink.
Yeah, groupthink, right.
Yeah.
Sorry if this is kind of half-baked. I don't, I've been trying
Those
to...
are the best kind. Go for it. Just lay it out there.
I think I had read somewhere that, obviously the story was reflexive of, of the Soviet Union and totalitarianism, but I think some of Orwell's critiques was also of Western society just a little bit. I wonder, I don't want to oversimplify what you were saying earlier, but kind of the lack of moral ambiguity of the past, where you could frame things much more easily as black and white. Is that more of a perception of how things actually were, or or is that actually how it was? And also, how do you think that the story, especially the tools of totalitarianism that, Richard Burton laid out, how do you think that those apply, at least to Western society, at least from the point of view of, 1949, whenever the book was written? I don't know if any of that makes sense.
I heard something, but for the broader conversation, there's a great book called The History of Government by Samuel Feiner, which talks about different types of political systems. And so we have different types of political systems that have emerged over time, and you see this kind of evolution over time with regards to some of these systems. We used to have totalitarian systems that were much more prevalent throughout the planet and much clearer to understand. And when we think of moral ambiguity, the minute you say that, I'm just I remember duck and cover raids, right? So it's the perception that nuclear weapons were just likely to happen at any point in time, at school at any point in time. You'd have an alarm go off, and initially we had the stick your heads between your knees and underneath the desk, and then inevitably, as the schools got better, we'd go into a basement for this particular type of thing. This was fairly clear, right? It's you had these kind of raids to prepare you for all these types of things. Very different from the school shooter type of things, but it's a similar type of mentality, but different enemy in many respects, right? So I think that was much clearer. The totalitarianism we're speaking about, the degree and magnitude of control of a single individual over a political system and an economic system and a social cultural system is very different from what we see, especially post-World War II, where democracy is the Soviet Union, while existed as the Soviet Union, was still had to talk in the language of democracy because that was the coin of the realm. What's that phrase? Is that the coin of the realm? This is the principal means that people understood how governance took place was democracy. So no longer was it totalitarianism. So even the most authoritarian governments, Kagame in Rwanda, they speak the language of democracy to communicate to individuals, because that's how we understand governance. So we don't understand governance in this totalitarian system anymore. So this is very dangerous. It was much clearer back then when you had like Mao. I mean, all you needed to know was a single person's name, and that would basically tell you everything you needed to know about politics and economics, which is kind of how you have it in Rwanda right now. But we don't call Rwanda a totalitarian system. We would call it a democracy mostly. But if you're paying attention closely, you'd see this is a totalitarian system, as Kagame owns the majority of the businesses, he owns the military, he's commanding everything. Anybody who challenges him is removed. So it's very clear, but we wouldn't call it that. Now this is our lack of understanding of how political systems generally function. So I think it was much clearer then, and the parsing of the world with, the communists over there and totalitarian governments over there and non-totalitarian governments over there was much clearer, and that helped. Once everyone became a democracy, then things became much more nuanced and harder to understand.
Putin has been democratically elected multiple times.
Yeah, one of the, I'll answer your question as I understand it. One of the interesting things in the movie too is that, sometimes they're at war with one country, and then that war's over, now we're at war with another country. The enemy is constantly changing, and it's just, manipulating the people like, oh, wonderful, our country has been heroic and we have won the war, and now we're at war with another one. This is very much the way the world exists in Putin's Russia. They sometimes refer to it as the fog of unknowability. One day we say that the missiles that took down the plane came from Russia, and the next day we say they came from Ukraine, and then we say they came from NATO. And it's just impossible to even know. And so people just sort of check out and aren't worried about holding their leaders accountable for telling the truth, because they've given up the idea that there's any truth at all. And so to me, that is a theme that comes through in this film, is how when people are lied to repeatedly, they lose the understanding of what it means to be lied to. And by the way, you say, where do people stand like that and do all that stuff? I think they do it at Trump rallies.
Yes.
Hi, folks. I'm Victoria Green. I work for Saul. This movie is pretty bleak, right? Not a lot of fun on a Wednesday evening, but I was trying to think about whether it offers us any hope, if there's any positive thing in it that we can hold on to. I'll say just a little bit more and then ask y'all what you think about positive messages, either in the movie or that you see connected to the movie. It sort of offers us the idea that there is salvation in human connection and in emotion, that is what, they say this, it can't be changed, except then it does, right? Winston doesn't love her anymore, maybe. So I sort of feel like it offers us that and then says, no, that is not something we could hold on to. So the one positive thing I could maybe see in it was the idea that any person just has to be completely beaten down. Look at how much effort they put into changing Winston, right? And so it sort of posits the idea that one person can make enormous change, because why would they spend so much effort on Winston? I'd be interested if you either saw messages I didn't or had more ideas. And if you're amenable, Professor McQuaid, I'd love to hear from you first.
Wow, is there anything redeeming about that movie? Well, when the credits roll, it's over. There's that. I enjoyed the book. I found the movie actually quite bleak, the treatment of it. But I think you raised a really important part, which is, when he had not only the relationship with another person, which offered hope, but his own ideas, right? Even though all of these awful things were happening, as long as he had his journal and he could write down his observations and his questioning in his own mind, they could not control him. Now, as you say, it takes an awful lot to beat it out of him, and ultimately, I suppose they succeed. But I think in our world, we always have the ability to love others and have connections with our fellow humans and have what in our head, we have our own ideas. So our governments may be able to control our behaviors, our benefits, our conditions, but they can't control our thoughts. And although the torture they do to Winston, I suppose, could beat us all down, I doubt I hope in our lifetimes we will not be subjected to similar things. I think no matter what happens in our government, we can have those thoughts. And so I take that as a positive thing. When I see a government, all the things that are going on in our politics, where there are people who are willing to choose tribe over truth and say things they know not to be true, the rest of us can speak out. We still have our own free thoughts and free ideas. And I believe that if we unite together, we still have the power through our democracy to overcome this political moment when people are trying to feed us a lot of false information that is not true. So I think we have the power to demand truth if we do that. So I like the journal. I think that's the part that I take away is the inability to control my thoughts.
Christian.
I think you have exactly hit upon the point of why this is an inspirational and the revolutionary potential exists within the film. Look at how much effort is exerted to control the people. Governments, add in the military, are completely outnumbered. We always forget this because they have F-16s, they've got tanks. Governments are just outnumbered. They are weak. They can be taken out. Repeatedly, this happens. So what do they then try to do? They then exert a tremendous amount of effort, and anybody who overtly kind of challenges them in some particular manner, it's just but for me, it's why kill Stephen Biko, but put Mandela in jail? Stephen Biko's idea was incredibly threatening to the apartheid system. He wanted to democratize both politics and economics, and they were like, oh, shit, can't have that, you gotta go. Mandela removes nationalization, and the ANC removed nationalization as an objective fairly clearly while he's in prison. They're like, oh, we could work with this. He gets out of jail, becomes president. He's got former members of the apartheid system in there. And so there's something fundamentally important about governments are always overwhelmed, they're always weak, and they're always trying to figure out how to channel individuals. But even Richard Burton goes, as long as you resist, we will continue. But there's always going to be someone who's going to resist. And there's always going to be someone. Notice how that's we broke you. It's not like we just broke you and we're pleased with that and we're good. No, we're going to show it to everybody else. And because we have to show it to everybody else, because we have to project strength despite the fact that we are incredibly weak. We give way too much credit to governments. We give way too much credit to the effectiveness of surveillance. Anyone who's familiar with wasn't Operation, the United States government basically took pictures of the internet for 3 or 4 days. We have a bunch of surveillance folks in School of Information. Just it wasn't, I always think it's Operation Condor, but it wasn't Operation Carnivore. 3 or 4 days of the whole internet. They're still trying to figure out all this information because it's way too much. Now, maybe AI could help them kind of navigate some of this data dump that they receive, but we give way too much credit to governments with regards to their ability to kind of subjugate populations. But one good thing always about human beings that are subject to some form of repression or oppression is they find some way to rebel against it. They find some way to exit that situation. They find some way to push back. And that's why channeling becomes so much important. It's if you can control, the reason why you have to ban books or the reason why you have to get rid of the most radical thinkers is you need to channel individuals into they're going to resist. It's just an issue of, okay, knowing that you're going to resist, how can we control that to be as little threatening to us as possible? But resistance and the inability to eliminate resistance, even with exerting tremendous amounts of effort and resources, is the underlying kernel of joy that you kind of get out of this. It's okay, yes, John Hurt is gone. And then I think of the Brazil version of this is even worse, right? It's just he goes into the fantasy, right? It's okay, so you have that element, but there's going to be another. There's always another John Hurt. There's always another John Hurt, and that's the small piece I take out of it. I'm okay, I could deal with that.
I think we have somebody waiting in the wings down here. Over here.
Hello. So I have two questions. Is that okay? So the first thing is the idea that like governments, authoritarian governments, making things so confusing and opaque, such that like the population essentially gives up on trying to detangle it and just abandon politics altogether is very familiar to me, having grown up in an authoritarian country. You can probably guess which one. But so like my parents, for example, completely don't want to talk about politics because they believe it's completely like all politicians just lie. There's no way of knowing the truth. So why bother like wasting any time on it? So like given, and I think in America we're sort of coming to that slowly, where like my friends would be like, well, here are our choices. There's nothing we can do beyond that, I guess. So with a population like that, what are the steps to like reverse that almost? Like how do you go about finding the truth and caring again? So that's my first question. My second question is about like TikTok versus books, right? So TikTok doesn't exist in a vacuum, and I think the reason why it's popular is because it's easy to consume, and people choose it over books consciously, if that makes sense. So it's not like TikTok is not like forced on us, like we chose to make it so popular. So like given a population that chooses easy entertainment over like difficult knowledge, how do you tackle that? Like how do you, how do you have a population that inform themselves when they like independently pick the easier option, if that makes sense? So that might.
Those are phenomenal questions. I'll take a stab at the first one, and I'd love to hear any answers to the second one. So the first one is, this idea that the question is, our questioner said she's even seen with her own parents disengaging from politics because the government has created this impression that you can't make a difference anyway, and your vote doesn't matter, and it's going to be the way it is. So, people are sort of discouraged from even participating in politics. I would say, at least in the United States, the way to motivate people is to let them know that, number one, your vote matters, and number two, try to raise with them an issue that they care about. So just a quick story on how your vote matters. Several years ago, my husband and I were working in our front yard putting up a trampoline for our children. And along came a man who was knocking on doors, running for office. He was running for Washtenaw County Commission. And my husband and I were prepared to vote for his opponent. It was a couple days before the election. And this guy stops, and he couldn't be nicer, and he helps us put up our trampoline. He stays with us for like 20 minutes, and we said, well, why don't you give us your spiel while we're doing this? And he gives the spiel, and he's just the nicest guy. And after he leaves, my husband and I agreed that we'll vote for him. And we did vote for him. And it was Ramzi Youssef, right? Is that his name, Ramzi Youssef? Our local, Youssef Rabi. It was Youssef Rabi, and he won that election by one vote. And I've since gone back to read that and like, am I right that Youssef Rabi was really elected by one vote? And the answer is yes. And everybody thinks they were the one who put him over the edge. And you know what? They're right, because he won by one vote. So every single vote mattered. Now, that was a local election, but Youssef Rabi has gone on to become a state legislator, and so that one election really mattered, and every single vote mattered. So every vote does matter. But the other thing is to motivate people. I think finding an issue that people really care about. For many young people, that issue right now is abortion. If you care about protecting abortion rights in the United States, there is one party that is working to expand abortion rights, and there's another that's working to restrict abortion rights. Maybe that's not your issue. Maybe you care about gun rights. Maybe you care about not banning books. Whatever it is, I think you can get people motivated. And if all else fails, get Taylor Swift on your side. Before Super Tuesday, she just posted, whoever you want to vote for, go ahead, but vote. Like, you've got a choice here. So that's one way to do it. But as for your TikTok question, which is very good, how do you get people to care about engaging in things that are hard versus choosing, fun dance videos or puppy videos on TikTok? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you come to events like this for one.
Yeah.
You value what universities and higher education and K through 12s and our library systems can provide. It's not just about doom scrolling whatever the latest thing or the latest app is on your phone.
We're fighting upstream on that one. So there's a great book called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. Neil Postman identifies that at the founding of the country, we were perhaps the most literate we ever were. And that's because like gazettes and almanacs and things, you had to read them in order to have food. So everyone was reading all the time. And if you look at like Lincoln's speeches, he was given like multi-hour speeches to thousands of people who would sit and navigate and wade through that. And then by the time we're moving to like the 60s, the predominant way of communication and the predominant media is the television. Then it moves to interactive websites, and then we get to TikTok. Notice the decline with regards to the amount of detail. And we also have the undermining of the educational system with the de-investment that's taking place over time, the lack of emphasis on this particular thing. So that people have no time or ability to read and comprehend detailed material. This is not random. But to fight back against it and be like, oh, you know, you need to read Beyond Capital. And yes, it is 800 pages. Yeah, I could say that, but okay, you could get that book right now and you're going to struggle to go through this because nothing we're doing is really preparing you for that. If we're preparing you for 30-second or 1-minute intervals of information, we are weakening your ability to actually understand complex ideas. So systematically, we can't just jump from one to the other. This is a long-term historical process, but it begins with you going, damn, maybe I should follow up on this particular, TikTok video and read that article in The Atlantic. Oh, they cited this piece, I should read that. But then, okay, that piece might be whack, so you need to read something else. And so now we're on that journey, right? Now we're on that collective, or it turns out, the person that wrote that book happens to be 3 blocks from me. All right, let me go to the professor's office, because no one's going to his office hours, because no one goes to my office hours or anybody's office hours, right? So you have plenty of time to go speak with them and be like, hey, look, I tried to read your book, and this is what I got out of it. Could you help guide me through some of these other things? I guarantee you that most people would be, okay, I'll engage with you, because no one's interacting, right? No one's engaging on those things. So we can turn that tide, but we are fighting a huge battle on that one.
Yeah, I also think, to some extent, we need to meet people where they are. And so, one idea is to teach, critical thinking, media literacy to kids in school so that they want to learn and want to understand these things. But I also wonder, could you make TikTok videos about, learning about civics, about big issues? It might require, but when I was a kid, there was something called Schoolhouse Rock, and it was an effort to meet kids where they were on television. It was a cartoon, and they had a series of cartoons. Anybody remember that? I'm just a Bill, and I'm here on Capitol Hill. All right. And I still remember these things. So it was an effort, I think, to meet kids where they were and to teach. And so if we're going to be on TikTok, maybe we embrace TikTok, and we use that as a way to communicate, here's the issue, and let's talk about it in, maybe you can't do it in a single TikTok video, but in a series of TikTok videos. I think people who are thoughtful and creative about messaging might be able to find a way to meet people where they are.
So I do want to pitch something that Christian said. For those of you in the audience who are students at the University of Michigan,
Or not.
we're a public university. These folks have offices. You are doing yourself a disservice if you don't take advantage. You don't have to go talk about your grades with a faculty member. You just have to understand that they have research interests, and you might learn something from them. Go knock on the door. Other questions?
Thanks for the discussion. Just 2 questions. So first is that, do you believe totalitarianism still exists in the world today? What's your opinion of countries like Russia and China or North Korea? And second is that, do you believe these countries will finally evolve into liberal democracy? In other words, do you agree with Francis Fukuyama's theory of the end of history? That's it. Thank you.
Francis is usually wrong. just to be straight, it's like he's got no data that he's collected on his own in his books normally, and so someone who doesn't collect data, I'm not a fan of. If you want to know about trajectories of political systems, I look at the VDEM project, the Varieties of Democracy project, or look at Polity. That'll give you every country in the world from 1800 to the present to give you some general sense of how the political systems are changing. First off. The end of history thesis was some internal discussion between some elites that has very little basis on actual documented evidence. So, but the first part of your question was...
Is there still totalitarian countries?
China under Mao is not the China that you have now. There is much more variability within the party, in parts because they let people live. When in Mao's period, they were not letting dissenters live, or in Stalinist Russia. Like, there was no varieties of the party. Stalin killed everybody who disagreed with him. So the nature of totalitarianism and authoritarianism has changed fundamentally, as you just can't whack people like you could in the old days. Now you have to have the pretense of democracy and the pretense of all these other kind of like machinations, a court and so forth. Now, I gave you my Kagame example before. Kagame eliminates all of his political rivals. You watch Kagame's behavior and you watch who's running against Kagame leading up to the election. Guarantee you, by the time you hit the month before the election is actually handled, that person disappears. They either go to jail or they leave the country, and he wins by 96%. The last two times. The first one might have been legit. I don't trust anything at this point, but the last two definitely weren't. And there is a court, there is a Supreme Court, and they do have rulings. And everyone was all excited about how many women were in the Rwandan government. They don't do squat. Kagame controls it all. So this is like a clear example of totalitarianism, but no one calls it that. Now, this could be some doublespeak. This is also this. He's very good at promoting himself. I've tried to make sure that he does not come to the University of Michigan, but because I don't think we should support that government, especially as they are involved in one of the worst mass killings on the planet. If you look at the war in the Congo in the last 10 years, we're talking like 4 to 10 million people have been killed in this conflict that we never discuss. And Kagame's all over it. This is him. This is Rwanda. This is the RPF. They've done it all. But we don't talk about that as being a totalitarian system, because if we did, we would take some action. Totalitarianism, like genocide, it like prompts people to be like, oh, that's bad. We got to get rid of it. So no one refers to it anymore. And no one knows the particularities of what a totalitarian system looks like. This gentleman up before was talking about totalitarianism in America. I'm like, we got rid of that because of the federal system. It's just like, it's federalism and disaggregation on crack. I mean, like, how do you have 14,000 policing organizations that rarely communicate with one another? All the different levels, not just states, but all the different levels of governance, all the different courts. I think we learned more about American democracy during Trump than any other historical time period. Because we were like, okay, he said this. Okay, who can counter that? Okay, so a court in Hawaii at this level can do this. We can get a petition over here that then has a spin-off effect. We learned more about how democracy functions because we had to. But we didn't get to the point of like, okay, so what's a totalitarian system? What's an authoritarian system? What's a corporatist system? I'd be like, what's a corporatist political system? And nobody, unless they're from Scandinavia, is going to raise their hand because no one knows what that is. Because we're not told the basics of what's the marketplace of ideas? What are all the different types of political systems that we could have? And we need a Schoolhouse Rock for that. It's like, here's what a democracy is. Here's what an autocracy is. The whole conversation about America going to civil war, Barbara Walter wrote this horrible book, and the New York Times picked it up and people ran with this narrative. We're not going to have a civil war. That's ridiculous. Anyone who actually studies civil war will tell you it's not going to be a civil war. What you might have is some specialized aspects of terrorism and vandalism, but nothing that rises to the level of civil war. Because the scholars who study civil war, the whole Barbara Walter thesis is based on some discredited thing from the 80s. But again, no one was reading that either. So we roll with that and we're like, oh, she was on CNN or she was on ABC. But they don't have experts on these things. They're looking at book sales. And so same with Francis. I'll bring my loop back. It's like Francis is popular, but he's not popular amongst academics. And why is that? Because we hate him for his successes, or he's just wrong and we can't counter the momentum that the establishment has with his agents and his book publishers, and he's given talks left and right. There's no point at which he's engaging with somebody to be like, okay, yo, dude, what's the data you have for that thesis? He's a great speaker, like Steven Pinker. They're great speakers, but the evidence is horrible. But you need to wade through the mud in order to show that that's wrong, and we don't have the same platform as Fukuyama does.
Right.
So.
Barb, let's get back to the first question. Totalitarianism.
You send me an email, christiandavenport@mac.com. I'll send you a whole series of people who show that he's just full of it. Yes.
Barb, thought on does totalitarianism still exist?
Well, I don't know enough to speak about the politics in other countries in the world, but I think that the idea of totalitarian regimes is to avoid anybody who might be a critic. And in Russia, for example, you talked about you can't really whack anybody before, but you have to cover it up, right?
At the same level.
Yeah, at the same level. Like you have to do it, but you say they unfortunately fell from a balcony, or they were poisoned, and we don't know how, or they died in a mysterious plane crash. Yeah, so there's certainly things going on in Russia. We see in China people get arrested who are journalists, who are protesters, and I think one of the ideas is that you have to eliminate anybody who might be a critic of the regime. And one of the things that I'm seeing in our country is not the same kind of totalitarianism where we lock up our enemies or where we kill our enemies, but there's certainly a movement to undermine critics of the leader. And so I just think about some of the language that Donald Trump uses, referring to the press as the enemy of the people. This is a potential critic, and so I want to undermine these critics. At his rallies, he points them out in the back and says, "These people are lying to you." And reporters who would cover his rallies would say things that people in the crowd would spit on them and say, "You're horrible people, why are you here?" And so, undermining some of the things that safeguard our country, undermining the courts, talking about Judge Tanya Chutkin as someone who is engaging in election interference by overseeing the case against him for federal election interference, Judge Engoron in New York and his clerk, and going after them and attacking them again and again, showing disdain for the courts by walking in and walking out and giving press remarks talking about how awful our court system is. Protesters in Lafayette Park during the Black Lives Matter protest, clearing that square with tear gas and walking to a church with a Bible to show that, I am in command here.
And a general by his side.
With a general in battle fatigues by his side to show that I have power over protesters. So this idea of undermining critics, we're not a totalitarian society, but we do share some of those tendencies when there are these attacks on critics in an effort to undermine their credibility in the public.
So I'd only toss in that, I may be a critic of certain political individuals. I rarely find the media's not a critic. The media should be a truth teller. And so even worse than suppressing critics or attacking critics, it's attacking truth tellers, people who are supposedly impartial and reporting the facts. All right, so I will give each of you 1 minute only. Any summation you want to add to this evening, because we are just about out of time.
I'll just say, number one, thank you for being here. We talk about the complaints about people who are just getting their news from TikTok. Good for you. Like, you're here, you're watching this film, you're engaged in the issues, you care about thinking about society and how we can be better. So we need more people like you to engage in issues. But I hope that you will recommit yourselves to the need for truth in society, for the need for us to govern ourselves and to push back against totalitarian regimes. We have the power to do that. We need to trust our power. There is value in voting. We have the power of the people, but we can't cede that to other people because we're more interested in TikTok videos or celebrity gossip or the weather or whatever it is, right? We have to care about our government because if not, we could end up, like Winston.
So I guess I'm going to say there is no 30-second or 1 minute solution. There is no quick summation. But I would suggest that there's a commitment to this journey, right? There's a commitment. We want to have a better planet, a better country, a better city, and then we need to put in the time to do that. And the way of partially doing that, I will not just come up with that, but I'll give you. There's a project called the Varieties of Democracy Project. I don't like many aspects of this project, but the thing I do like is they give you several hundred aspects of political democracy. We spend way too much time talking about elections. There's so many other things that could be done within a political democracy that we have access to that shift, that move things forward. So in addition to elections and voting, consider all of the other ways that you could participate and acknowledge that that's how things change, by having a better understanding of the repertoire of activities that are available to you for living in this particular society and availing yourself of the opportunity to take advantage of that, as well as the cool thing about living in a college town, college city, is we have these types of environments, and like every other person walking around you is either acquiring knowledge or generating knowledge, and we do not take advantage of that enough. And so very happy to have this particular event, but also we need to do these types of things much more frequently. Thank you.
You're both on the hook for more frequently. So look, it's hard sometimes not to feel bleak, and it's why people like Christian and Barb and the work they do and the lights they shine on these challenging times has never been more important. It's why your participation tonight has never been more important. I will make a pitch for Barb. So you saw her once tonight. You can see her again tomorrow. She's going to be at the Ann Arbor District Library doing a book talk with John U. Bacon at 6:30? 6:30 in the main lobby. So please consider attending that as well. The book will be there as well. Look, thank you, Christian, and thank you, Barb, and thank you all for attending. Thanks to ITS and the School of Information for sponsoring this, for my hardworking staff, and for the students from SI that helped put this on. Visit safecomputing.umich.edu for more events like this. There will be more. Please consider this not being our future. So unthink some of what you saw, and let's get double plus good about something else. Thank you again.